What if Megumi Fushiguro got his full potential? For this what if, there are a couple different ways to do it, but in this version, he has his full potential right from the beginning. All 10 Shikigami are already tamed. That is his main potential, and he starts the series with access to everything the 10 Shadows technique can offer. Now, I am only going to talk about the arcs that Megumi Fushiguro is actually in, since JJK is such a long story. Before that, let's explain his abilities. Skip this part if you already know them. The 10 Shadows technique is a hereditary jujutsu technique that allows its user to summon and control up to 10 Shikigami by manifesting them from shadows, while also using shadows as a versatile combat medium. The Shikigami include Divine Dogs, which specialize in tracking and close-range combat and can fuse into Divine Dog Totality to greatly increase power. Nue, a flying Shikigami that attacks with lightning and provides aerial mobility. Great Serpent, Orochi, which is used for binding and crushing enemies. Toad, which restrains targets and enables shadow movement and combo summons. Max Elephant, a massive Shikigami that releases overwhelming amounts of water for pressure and terrain control. Rabbit Escape, which creates thousands of rabbits to block vision and overwhelm opponents. Piercing Ox, which gains unstoppable destructive force the longer it charges in a straight line. Round Deer, which uses reverse curse technique to heal and neutralize cursed energy. And Maharaga, a Shikigami that adapts to any attack or phenomenon after experiencing. Beyond summoning, the technique allows the user to store weapons, objects, and themselves inside shadows. Move through shadows, partially manifest Shikigami traits, fuse Shikigami together, and sacrifice destroyed Shikigami to permanently strengthen others. Its peak is the domain expansion Chimera Shadow Garden, which floods the area with shadows, boosts physical ability, allows repeated and duplicated Shikigami usage, enables shadow cloning, and gives full freedom of movement through shadows, making the 10 Shadows technique one of the most versatile techniques in the series. During the introduction arc, everything at Sugasawa High would play out very differently. From the moment he senses Sukuna's finger, Megumi would instantly understand how dangerous it is and take full control of the situation. Instead of reacting slowly or being pushed back, he would move fast, using advanced 10 Shadows techniques to lock down the school, track the curse, and protect Yuji and the other students at the same time. When the curse attacks, Megumi would defeat it cleanly and quickly without getting overwhelmed or injured. Because Megumi never loses control of the fight, Yuji Itadori would never be forced into a life or death moment, meaning he would have no reason to eat Sukuna's finger. Yuji would still show his insane physical strength, but he would leave the arc as a normal human instead of becoming Sukuna's vessel. Since there is no emergency and no Sukuna awakening, Satoru Gojo likely wouldn't rush to the scene at all, or he would arrive after everything is already finished. This version of the arc establishes Megumi as a top-level sorcerer from the very start, delays Yuji's connection to Sukuna, and completely changes how the story begins. During the Cursed Womb Fearsome Womb arc, the mission plays out very differently because Yuji is not involved at all. Megumi Fushiguro and Nobara are sent to the detention center, with Megumi clearly taking command from the start. As soon as they enter the building, Megumi senses that the Cursed Womb inside is far stronger than what the mission report claimed. Instead of moving blindly, he first summons Divine Dogs and sends them ahead to track the curse and map out the building, letting him understand where the threat is without putting Nobara at risk. To control the area, Megumi uses Toad Shikigami to restrain weaker curses and block paths, making sure nothing can surprise them from behind. When the finger bearer finally appears, Megumi immediately switches to offense, using Nue from above to strike and distract it while he moves through the shadows to attack from different angles. When the curse tries to overpower them, Megumi briefly brings out the presence of Maharaga as a defensive pressure tool, not fully unleashing it, but enough to force the finger bearer to hesitate and lose control. With the curse destabilized, Megumi finishes the fight using a coordinated attack with Divine Dogs, tearing through it completely. The finger bearer is destroyed without Sukuna, without anyone dying, and without the mission ever falling apart. By the end of the arc, Megumi proves he can handle special grade level threats on his own, changing how the higher-ups see him and delaying Sukuna's return to the story. During the training arc, Megumi Fushiguro becomes the clear focus of Jujutsu High's training because of how dominant he was during the detention center mission. Instead of basic lessons, Megumi is pushed into advanced combat training meant for upper-level students. Under Satoru Gojo, Megumi trains to sharpen his control over the 10 Shadows technique, rather than unlock new power. He practices summoning multiple Shikigami at once without losing stamina, using Divine Dogs for close combat pressure, Nu for aerial control, and Toad for restraining opponents during sparring matches. Gojo also forces Megumi into constant mock battles against students like Maki Zenin, Panda, and Toge Inumaki, pushing him to fight without relying on brute force alone. alone. Megumi also trains shadow movement heavily, learning to attack, defend, and reposition at the same time, making him extremely hard to pin down. By the end of the arc, Megumi isn't just strong. He's controlled, efficient, and already being treated by the school as a sorcerer who is preparing for much larger threats. This arc solidifies Megumi as Jujutsu High's main rising weapon, while Sukuna and Yuji remain completely out of the picture for now. During the Mahito arc, events unfold very differently, because Yuji Itadori is still not part of the Jujutsu world. Instead, Megumi Fushiguro is assigned alongside Nanami to investigate the strange human deaths connected to a new curse. From the start, Megumi can tell this enemy is not a normal curse. When he encounters Mahito, Megumi immediately realizes Mahito's technique is extremely dangerous and avoids direct contact. He uses divine dogs to pressure Mahito from a distance, forcing him to dodge and reveal how his ability works. To control the battlefield, Megumi summons Toad to bind Mahito's movements, limiting how freely he can shape his body. When Mahito tries to escape or split himself apart, Megumi uses Nue to strike from above and keep constant pressure on him. Megumi also relies heavily on shadow movement, slipping in and out of the shadows to avoid being touched even once. While Megumi cannot fully exercise Mahito due to his strange soul-based ability, he manages to push him back and force a retreat. By the end of the arc, Megumi understands that Mahito is a long-term threat, and Mahito in turn becomes interested in Megumi as a dangerous obstacle. This arc shifts the conflict away from Yuji and instead places Megumi directly on Mahito's radar, setting up a future clash that feels more strategic and personal. During the Kyoto Goodwill event arc, the situation is already different from the start because Yuji Itadori is not part of the event at all. In the original timeline, Kyoto's secret mission was to kill Yuji because he was Sukuna's vessel. Since Yuji never ate Sukuna's finger in this timeline, that order never exists. Because of this, the event begins as a real competition instead of an assassination attempt, but the tension between both schools is still very high. At the start of the event, Aoi Todo charges straight into battle looking for the strongest opponent. In the original plan, Panda was meant to face Todo first and distract him, but with Yuji not there, Megumi decides to step in himself. Knowing how dangerous Todo is, Megumi Fushiguro chooses not to let his teammates get overwhelmed. Confident in his full potential, Megumi summons Mahoraga to face Todo directly. Todo rushes in head-on, excited by Mahoraga's presence, and the fight becomes a raw clash of strength and adaptation. Mahoraga quickly begins adjusting to Todo's attack, forcing Todo to fight seriously. However, Megumi keeps the fight controlled and does not allow Mahoraga to kill him. Once it's clear that Todo is completely outmatched, Megumi pulls back, ending the fight without unnecessary damage. This earns Todo's respect rather than fear. While Megumi is handling Todo, he still keeps control of the rest of the battlefield. He uses divine dogs to track Kyoto students moving through the forest and warn his teammates of danger. When long-range fighters like Noritoshi Kamo and Mai Zenin attack, Megumi summons Nue to pressure them from above and force them to retreat. He also uses Toad Shikigami to restrain enemies who get too close to students like Maki Zenin and Toge Inumaki, keeping everyone alive and organized. Midway through the event, everything changes when the cursed spirit Hanami suddenly attacks the battlefield. The Goodwill event immediately turns into a real fight for survival. Megumi reacts faster than anyone, ordering students to regroup instead of panic. He summons Max Elephant to flood parts of the forest, slowing Hanami's movement while using Rabbit Escape to confuse and block Hanami's vision. This creates openings for both Tokyo and Kyoto students to escape deadly attacks. Megumi's shadow movement allows him to constantly reposition, saving multiple students who would have been killed in the chaos. When Satoru Gojo arrives to confront Hanami, Megumi continues supporting the fight instead of stepping back. He uses his Shikigami to limit Hanami's escape routes and protect injured students while Gojo takes over the main battle. Because of Megumi's control over the field, far fewer students are hurt compared to the original timeline. Hanami is forced to retreat much sooner, realizing the battlefield is completely stacked against them. By the end of the arc, both schools clearly understand that Megumi is no longer just a student. Kyoto students stop seeing Tokyo as rivals and start seeing Megumi as an overwhelming force. Tokyo students begin relying on him as their main leader in combat. Even the teachers realize that Megumi's presence completely changed the outcome of the event. Without Yuji being hunted and with Megumi dominating both the competition and the real threat, the balance of the Jujutsu world begins shifting much earlier than it ever did before. During the Shibuya incident arc, everything starts with Satoru Gojo already on site handling the situation until he is sealed, which instantly turns Shibuya into a survival zone for every sorcerer still inside. Megumi Fushiguro, already at full potential, moves through the city carefully instead of charging forward, using divine dogs to scout and warn others before they are ambushed, and using shadows to avoid being trapped. This alone keeps people like Kento Nanami alive longer, even though Nanami is still pushed to his limit and badly injured. With Yuji not present, Mahito becomes focused on Megumi instead, drawn to his strength and wanting to break him directly. Their fight becomes unavoidable and turns into a true win-or-lose battle. Megumi avoids all close contact at first, knowing Mahito's touch is fatal, and uses Rapid Escape to block vision, Toad Shikigami to restrain Mahito for brief moments, and Shadow Movement to stay out of reach. As the fight escalates and Mahito keeps adapting, Megumi realizes there is no other option and summons Mahoraga. Unlike a short distraction, Mahoraga is fully brought into the fight, and its adaptation directly counters Mahito's soul-based technique. Mahito tries to evolve and escape, but Mahoraga continues adjusting, breaking through Mahito's defenses and landing decisive blows. This fight ends clearly with Mahito being completely exercised, removing one of the most dangerous threats in Shibuya far earlier than in the original timeline. That single outcome saves countless lives, because Mahito is no longer roaming the city, creating transfigured humans or hunting sorcerers. With Mahito gone, Megumi continues moving between battles, using Nue to scatter curse groups before they can surround allies and Max Elephant to flood key areas and slow enemy movement. Because of this, several situations that originally turned deadly are avoided or softened. Maki Zenin does not suffer the burning incident that removes her from the fight in the original timeline, since Megumi cuts off enemy routes before that moment can happen, leaving her injured but still active. Against other disaster curses like Jogo and Dagon, Megumi does not try to overpower them direct. Instead, he delays and redirects them, forcing retreats and escapes so they cannot freely wipe out sorcerers. Even with these changes, Shibuya is still devastating, and many lives are lost, but the collapse is slower and less absolute. Near the end of the arc, Yuji Itadori is finally brought back into the story after being kidnapped and forcibly fed multiple Sukuna fingers, turning him into a vessel without his consent. Yuji returns confused, angry, and terrified, fully aware that he's been turned into a weapon. When Sukuna emerges, the destruction is immediate, but Megumi does not rush him recklessly. He pulls back, protects others, and survives, understanding that fighting Sukuna head-on would only add to the death toll. Sukuna, however, takes clear interest in Megumi and the fully realized Ten Shadows technique, choosing not to end that clash yet. By the time Shibuya ends, Gojo is sealed, Mahito is dead, Yuji is broken by what was forced onto him, and the city is left in ruins. But because Megumi fought where Yuji once would have and eliminated one of the deadliest threats outright, more key characters live, fewer moments spiral into instant death, and the future conflict becomes far more focused and far more dangerous. After the Shibuya incident ends, the Jujutsu world immediately turns its attention to Yuji Itadori. Even though Yuji was kidnapped and forced to become Sukuna's vessel, the higher-ups do not care about the circumstances. To them, Sukuna existing inside Yuji is enough reason to label him a threat that must be erased. This leads directly into the Itadori's extermination arc, where Yuji is marked for execution the moment he regains control of his body. Yuji wakes up after Shibuya physically alive but mentally broken. He remembers pieces of what Sukuna did while controlling him, and the guilt hits harder than ever because he never chose this path. Unlike before, Yuji does not argue or try to defend himself. He believes he deserves punishment, and for a short time, he fully accepts that his life might need to end. This is where Yuji's relationship with Megumi Fushiguro becomes important again. Megumi does not treat Yuji like a weapon or a curse. Instead, he treats him like someone who was used. Megumi understands better than anyone what it feels like to have power forced onto you, and he makes it clear that Yuji becoming Sukuna's vessel was not a choice. Because Megumi has already proven himself as a top-level sorcerer, his opinion carries weight, and he actively pushes back against the idea that Yuji should be executed immediately. This does not erase the dangers Sukuna represent, but it changes how Yuji is viewed by those close to him. During the perfect preparation arc, Yuji finally makes a real decision for himself. Instead of running or waiting to be killed, Yuji chooses to become a Jujutsu sorcerer for real this time, not because someone told him to, but because he wants to take responsibility for what Sukuna is capable of. Yuji trains seriously, focusing on cursed energy control and combat discipline, knowing that brute strength alone is not enough anymore. His mindset is much darker and more serious than before. He is no longer chasing ideals, but trying to make sure no one else pays for his existence. Yuji's inner interactions with Megumi, Maki, and the others are quieter in this arc. There are no jokes or light moments like before. Maki Zenin treats Yuji with blunt honesty, pushing him to get stronger without pity. Megumi acts as both a grounding presence and a warning, reminding Yuji that if he loses control again, Megumi will be the one to stop him if necessary. Yuji accepts this without hesitation, showing how much he has changed. This mutual understanding creates a stronger, more serious bond between them than they ever had before. By the end of the perfect preparation arc, Yuji is no longer just the Sukuna vessel. He is an active sorcerer who has chosen to stand in the Jujutsu world fully aware of the risk he represents. The execution order may still exist, but Yuji is no longer running from it. With Megumi at full potential and Yuji finally walking his own path, the story shifts into a darker phase, one where both of them move forward not as reckless students, but as people carrying responsibility that could shape the future of the Jujutsu world. During the Culling game arc, Megumi Fushiguro enters the colonies with one goal: end threats fast and protect the people around him. He moves carefully through the game, using divine dogs to track powerful sorcerers and avoid pointless fights, only stepping in when someone poses a real danger. When Megumi does fight, it's controlled and efficient. He uses Toad Shikigami to restrain opponents, Nue to attack from above and break their focus, and Shadow Movement to stay untouchable. Against stronger reincarnated sorcerers, Megumi escalates quickly, bringing out Rabbit Escape to overwhelm them and Max Elephant to control terrain and force mistakes. His biggest and most draining fight comes against Yorozu, where Megumi is pushed non-stop and forced to cycle through nearly all of his Shikigami just to survive. Even at full potential, the fight leaves him exhausted, injured, and mentally worn down. That weakness becomes the opening Sukuna has been waiting for. When Sukuna finally makes his move, Megumi does not give up easily. He resists with everything he has, trying to suppress Sukuna from the inside and fighting for control of his own body. For a moment, it looks like Megumi might actually hold him back, but Sukuna's strength, experience, and cruelty are simply too overwhelming. Megumi is crushed under that pressure, and Sukuna forcibly takes control anyway. The arc ends with Megumi still conscious deep inside, aware of what's happening but unable to stop it, marking the moment where all of his strength still wasn't enough and setting up the darkest turn in his story. After Sukuna takes control of Megumi's body, everything that follows mostly plays out the same way as the original story. Yuji Itadori is left completely shattered by what happens, knowing that Megumi fought as hard as possible and still lost. That guilt becomes fuel. Yuji doesn't break, he hardens. From that point on, Yuji's focus is clear, stopping Sukuna no matter what it costs. As the conflict escalates, Satoru Gojo eventually returns to the battlefield, and the world-shaking clash between Gojo and Sukuna happens just like in canon. Cities are torn apart, power scales are broken, and the Jujutsu world is pushed to its absolute limit. Yuji continues moving forward through all of it, fighting Sukuna's influence, destroying his plans piece by piece, and carrying the weight of Megumi's loss with him. Even though Megumi's story takes a tragic turn, his full potential still mattered. His resistance slowed Sukuna down, changed key outcomes, and gave Yuji the resolve he needed to keep going. Make sure to like and subscribe for more Jujutsu Kaisen What If stories. Click the video on screen right now, What If Deku Had New Order, and if you want to talk anime, theories, or future videos, check out my Discord and my main channel linked down below.